Okay, so I want to thank you all for coming, and a special thank you to Roger for recording this Zoom so we can share it with everybody else. So let's get this started, and welcome to Cannabis and Kangen. I'm Suzanne Gaudette, and I'm sitting here. I was sitting here after our last Zoom, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I have auto flowering plants and none of mine look like that. And actually, when Kelly says you can't move them, well, there was my mistake because I moved the damn things 3 times. So I had questions and I wanted answers because, I'm not the best seed in the bag. Okay. So here we are. And thank you to my beautiful friend, Kelly Solitero, and her infinite wisdom. Kelly, are you ready for me?
I am. Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to let you know why we're doing this. When I was on a lot of medications, and when I hit 10 years of, my doctor said, well, you're chronic now. You have chronic pain. There's nothing we can do. What do you want? And I said, well, I don't want chemicals because I'm reacting to them. I don't want something that's going to give me, I have a young son. I didn't have a young son at the time, but I wanted to be coherent. And so basically what happened is I got prescribed medical marijuana, but then I found out I was pregnant. So I couldn't be on all my chemical medications. So I had to go off of everything. So I went through withdrawal like crazy, lost a ton of weight and was super sick. And so I'm like, well, can I use cannabis when I'm pregnant? And they said, yes, it's the only thing that you can use that is safe for your child. I said, okay. So I ordered it through the government and thinking, they are following Health Canada regulations. It's all going to be safe. Well, after I ingested the product, I got a letter a couple months later stating that they were recalling it because there was chemicals and pesticides used that weren't allowed to be used. And I'm like, well, I've ingested it and now it's in my son's body, and like, I can't have this. So I wanted a way to be able to grow chemical free, and my husband gave me a hard time, and I said, no, we can do it, and I want to do it. And so I did an experiment and I showed him this can be done without any chemicals. And now I want to show the world, because everybody wants options and they want better options, and going chemical free is better for the environment, better for your body. It's better in so many ways. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So thank you all for being here. So you have questions, Sue?
Yes, I do, Kelly. And the first one I want to know is, where do you buy your seeds from? Like, where's the best place? Like, is it good to just get them off somebody that just randomly has any that are growing off their plants, or can you buy them online? Like, which best way to go?
So with your seeds, you can go to your local cannabis store if there's one near you. If there's not one convenient, you can go and search the seed banks online. Some of the ones that I found that people that I know have gotten them from, I've never ordered from a seed place online. I always get them from my harvest from the year before. So you can get them from the worldstrongeststrains.com, weedseedsonline.net, or rocketseeds.com. But if you wait and you get them off your plants, then you can go through them and choose which ones you want to use.
Okay, and before we go to the second one, can everybody please mute themselves? Brian, please, if you don't mind. Carrie, you don't mind muting yourself? There's a little bit of sound. Thank you very much. Okay, so my second one is, so how can I can I plant them directly in the soil, or do you have to do the water?
There's different ways to germinate your seeds. So you can put it directly in the soil, and a lot of newbies, people who are not, who don't know a lot about it, can put it in the soil. You just have to make sure that you're putting them not very deep into the soil, so only about 10 to 15 millimeters. You want to make sure that the soil over top is loose. You want to make sure that you're using a premium quality soil. You don't want to use something high in a lot of nutrients, and you don't want to compress the soil. because you want to make sure that your seed can penetrate the soil. They do sell soil for seeds, which I use, so it makes it a lot easier for them to be able to penetrate. You want to make sure that you're spraying it. You don't want to use a cup to pour, because you're just going to make the seed sink further, and you want to make sure that it sits near the top. So you want to keep it moist, but you want to also have it in a damp area that is slightly warmer than room temperature. So you're on the warmer side. So 22, 23 degrees and around there. Now,
Okay. So, sorry.
If you were to germinate your seeds the way that I do, you just have to be careful not to damage the root, because you want the root tips to be about 2 to 3 millimeters. And the way that I do it is through the paper towel method. Other people use the glass of water method, but it's the least effective method. And a lot of beginners will just throw it in a glass of water just because it's simple and easy. But you have to maintain the level of water, the temperature in the water. You have to make sure that it stays at 22 degrees, because if it fluctuates down, you're going to have a hard time germinating those seeds. Paper towel method I find is the easiest. I put them on a paper towel. I put the seeds on top. I spray it with some water, and I actually set it under a little light, and that light provides the heat that I need to be able to keep it at room temperature, so that I don't have any issues with my seeds. Then you just take the seeds from there and you put them in the pots about 10 to 15 centimeters down again, because you want to make sure that you're able to penetrate the soil to come up.
Okay, now what, like mine, for some stupid reason, I got a little bit of paper towel stuck on my root. So
Yeah.
like I cut around it so I wouldn't do it. So is that going to hurt it?
It's not going to hurt it. Paper towel is something that is easy to break down, depending on the type of paper towel. Of course, you don't want to buy one with chemicals, because you're using it with your seeds anyways. It's something that's going to break down. It's very, very malleable. So you're not going to have to worry about that if that's in your soil, because you buy your pots, your peat pots, and you normally just tear down the side of those when you're replanting them, so that way it allows to go through. So it's not an issue if you have paper towel stuck to your roots.
Okay, good. All right. So how can you tell if your seeds are good? Like some of them still float on top of the water, or some don't open. So before you even start, how would you know?
All right. So they say the ones that sink are bad seeds, but it's really hard to say, because some people will say that the ones that sink are female and the ones that float are male, and there's so many different ways that people are saying about seeds. But if you actually want to know to look at a seed, if you squish it and there's nothing in it, it's a dead seed. If it's pale green or white seeds, they tend to not germinate, and they tend to be weaker. To get a seed that's going to have a good strong stem on it to begin with, you're not going to know that until you plant the seeds. But by looking at the picture on the left here, you see that your seeds 1, 3, and 5 have like a volcano opening at the top. It's a depression. Those are actually female seeds. So seeds 2 and 4 would be garbage, unless you're looking for male seeds. If you're looking for male seeds, then you want to keep 2 and 4 and give 1, 3, and 5 to your friends who could really use them if you're not sure what you're doing either. But 1, 3, and 5 are the ones that you really want.
Okay, so then once they're planted and everything, and nobody knows that, how do you tell between sexes in a plant?
Well, you tell by the way the plant looks. So you want the female seeds to produce the buds. If you're looking for seeds, you want the male seeds, but you want to make sure that you're not making your neighbors mad, because it will fertilize within so many miles of you. So anybody's plants that are in that area, their plants are going to focus on growing seeds instead of making buds. So you want to make sure that if you get a male plant, what we do is we take the pot outside, because we start them all in the house, and by the time we see that they're male plants with the seeds on it, we take the whole pot and everything outside to make sure that none of the seeds have dropped inside to be able to fertilize my female plants. We take it outside, we burn it, we make sure that everything's out of the soil. And if we don't get to it quick enough and things are dropping in the soil, then we get rid of the soil completely and just start fresh with a new soil in that pot for a female plant. but you can
Okay,
clearly
so
tell the difference when you're looking at the plants, and it's not right away. So that's why some people will start, like we're allowed 4 plants. So some people will start like 6 plants to make sure that they've got, ones that are viable with a thick enough stem, and make sure that their feminized seeds that they bought are actually female seeds, because sometimes they're not.
okay, that's awesome. Thank you. And good pictures there. So, what pH is good for growing, Kelly? Like, where do you start and end with it, I would imagine, right?
Yep. So basically the pH for growing, so when you have your plants, the plants uptake nutrients at a 6 to 7 pH is their perfect range for them to uptake the nutrients that they actually need. So that's why a lot of people will use like a reverse osmosis or something to give them the negative, like the acidic water, but it also takes the minerals out of the water, which is okay in the beginning, because you don't want a lot of nutrients in your plants, which we'll talk about that as well. But if you're growing hydroponics or without soil, you need to need a lower pH than the 6 to 7, because you want to make sure that your roots are uptaking, and all your nutrients are going into the plant that are needed. Seedlings are very little, very tiny, and they can be burned very easily. So why I water my seedlings with 5.5, because they don't need the nutrients, and they really don't need a lot of nutrients from the soil, because they actually produce their own nutrients to be able to get them growing to where they need to be. It's not until you get to the veg stage that you really need to go. But as your stems start getting bigger, switch to the 6, because if you switch too early, you're going to burn your leaves. Your leaves will go like yellow and brown on the ends. So your way that you tell with your plants, if there's a problem, look at the leaves.
Okay, so what nutrients do we need for a bigger bud then?
The nutrients that make the biggest buds are different in each stage. So with the seedling stage, you don't really need a lot of nutrients. In the veg phase, your nitrogen is your most important. So when I used the cow manure, it was really old cow manure, so it had built up some nitrogen, a lot of nitrogen in there, and that's why my plants in the veg phase did so well. And then adding phosphorus, potassium, and the calcium and magnesium and everything already in the water, and then the phosphorus and potassium that are in the kale, it happened to make them grow really well. So I hadn't done really a lot of research on this beforehand, before I added the kale. But then once I'm like, okay, well, what nutrients are in there? And then I started researching, I'm like, oh, well, that's why it did so well, because your most important nutrients are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus to get the biggest buds.
Wow, that's amazing. And our machine does all of that.
Well, the nitrogen,
All of
potassium,
it.
phosphorus, you want to add something with nutrients. So like myself, I added kale and cow manure. So the cow manure, or any type of manure, depending if you use bat guava, it has more nitrogen in it. So it all depends on what you're using. But I found that the manure and the kale was enough, to give me enough of the 3 nutrients that I needed, with the calcium and magnesium and everything that was already in the water.
Okay, awesome. All right, my next one is, what about defoliation? Does it hurt the plant? When do you do that, or should you do that?
Well, defoliation can hurt the plant, and it can also help the plant. If you do it properly, it can hurt. It can make your plant grow huge. So if you see the plant on the right, it's been picked down, basically skinned. So what they did is they only left the top buds sites, so that way they could get the most coluses out of it. But you don't want to actually do that, because that's actually limiting how much product you're going to get off the plant. You want to leave the lower ones as well, but just take the leaves off, unless you really only want the tops of the plants and you have limited space. Then of course then you can skin it down. But when you see the difference in 12 days later, compared to the plant on the left hasn't grown much compared to the
Wow.
plant on the right has overtaken. And people indoors do that because your light stays fixed on the top, where with the sun, the light is moving from side to side on your plant usually, or whichever way the sun is going compared to how you have your plants. So you don't have to worry so much as of defoliating outside. You just want to take your lower ones that aren't going to get the sun, so that way you can get the bigger buds on the top. But if you decide you just want to leave your outdoor plants, then just leave them. Just you can pull the big third sucker leaves off, is what they call them.
Okay, and I guess I messed us up because I totally missed us.
That's
What's
okay.
called Miracle-Gro, because that one there, that's a big one. Can you explain why you shouldn't, or could you go with Miracle-Gro?
I'm gonna see if this video will play. If it doesn't have sound, let me know, okay?
No, I'm not hearing it.
Okay, no problem. So basically, this video is stating that Miracle-Gro has its benefits, but it has its disadvantages as well. With Miracle-Gro soil, it has a lot of nitrogen in it, and your plants don't really need a lot of nitrogen after the first 2 phases. Then when you get into your 3rd phase, you can actually hurt your plant by having too much nitrogen. So you want to make sure that you're using the proper nutrients during each phase to get the biggest yield from your plants. And the biggest problem with Miracle-Gro is the nutrient formula is one formula for the entire plant's life cycle, where marijuana has 3 distinct different life cycles that you need to make sure that you're having enough nutrients for each. You don't want to overpower in the beginning. So you don't want to have too much nitrogen in the beginning. So that's why when I grow inside and I start my plants, I start with no nutrients and the 5.5 water. So that way, if there is anything in the soil, it's not being uptake to my plant as much. So it's not going to burn my leaves. It's not going to damage my plant, which isn't going to hurt it later on. Once it's big enough, you move it outside, then you can add the nutrients to the soil, manures, or whatever you need to add, compost, or whatever the case might be. So as you're growing through the phases, you need to be able to have control. And with Miracle-Gro, you don't have that. Also with Miracle-Gro, it's very harmful for the environment because of the chemicals that are used. A lot of them are oil-based, and a lot of them are very bad for the environment. So they're causing a lot of issues with people who are starting to grow and using Miracle-Gro, because the runoff is going into lakes and streams, and it's changing the pH of the oceans, and there's a huge, massive effect on the environment for using Miracle-Gro, and you're not going to get the best of your plants. So why use it?
So I would assume even the Miracle-Gro soil, it would be the same thing, right? Because it's time released and probably the worst.
Yes, because it'll last longer than the time that you need for the nitrogen to come out, and it'll actually burn your plants, and it won't give you as much yield in the flowering and budding stage.
Wow. Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so now we have the growth. I want to ask about the growth stages. Like, how long before the plant starts making buds? When do you finally pull the plant and do your thing?
So basically, the life stages are, you have your germination. So with Kangen water, it cuts the germination down to 1 to 2 days from 5 to 10 days normally. The seedlings take about 2 to 3 weeks. Then you change the light over. If you have them indoors, you change them over to 18 hours on, 6 hours off. Depending on how big you want your plants to be, is depending on how long you let your vegetative state go. If you have your vegetative state and you only want a little plant because you're growing indoors and you want a quick yield, people cut down the amount of time that they're in the veg phase, and then they force their plants to go into the flowering stage. Outdoors, typically you put the plant outside when it's small, and as it gets bigger, you're reliant on the temperatures outside as well as the seasons. So you're waiting until fall to be able to harvest the plants.
Okay, so Kelly, we have a few people that weren't on last time, and before we finish this meeting, can you explain again how you grew your massive crop? Like, holy crap.
Yeah, yes. So basically, Enagic made it possible for personal or for business use. So for huge scale or small scale, whatever you want to do, they have the machine that's going to be able to help you do that. And getting the different pH levels, because you need to keep your plants in a certain pH. You can, if you go to Canadian Tire or Walmart or any of those places and pick up a $15 think they're even $12, a pH tester that you can stick in the soil, and it shows you where your pH is at. Then you can use different levels of the water to be able to play with the pH to be able to make it to stay where you need to make it. And I will go over the waters, but a little bit about the company. It's a very reputable company because they've been around since 1974. This device is actually approved as a medical device. And the reason that I use this device is because I knew that it was going to be 100% safe for me. And it was going to also be safe for my family. And I don't have to worry about my animals being around my plants or being outside or anything like that, because there's nothing harmful. I'm using water to be able to treat my plants. So it has platinum coated titanium plates, which are medical grade, not slotted or meshed. So they're not going to break down on you. There's the industrial best automatic self-cleaning system. So the machine actually automatically cleans itself, but we do a cleaning once a month that, you know, we can help you with. And you know, there's videos out there to be able to do it. It's really simple, really easy. 20 to 30 year life expectancy on the units because of the units that are already out there in homes. That's how long they've been out there, and they're lasting. As long as you're maintaining it, which isn't very hard to do, it's going to last you and you're going to get your money's worth. I would spend, to give you an idea, I would spend $8,000 in a year just in medical marijuana to the government so I could get the strength that I needed, because I needed a strong THC level. I needed at least over 20% in order for it to work in my body. So I wanted to make sure that if I'm growing my plants, and that was why I was hesitant in the beginning about growing, because my doctor said, well, why don't you grow it? And I'm like, well, I want to make sure I have enough. And if I don't have enough, then I can't buy it from the government because it's not legal for me to buy it from anybody. And I don't want to buy it off the street because of the chemicals and everything else in it. So for me to save $8,000 in 1 year by growing 3 plants instead of the 4 that everybody's allowed, I only had 3. And I ended up with over 4.5 pounds of weed. And so that is more, if you do the math, that is more than what my prescription is per day.
Right.
So with the machines lasting 3 to 5 years, with the 3 to 5 year warranty, and they have an extended warranty if you need it as well, like the machines are lasting. So there's not an issue that way. And it's patented technology so that nobody can copy it. And that's the great thing about Enagic, is this is only one ionizer, and it can produce the hypochlorous acid, the sodium hydroxide, and all the other waters in one machine that you would need for an indoor or outdoor grow. Indoors, you would need more of the hypochlorous acid and the sodium hydroxide because you have your pests inside. Outside, you don't have those pests. So outside, you have your ladybugs, which I used to buy ladybugs to get rid of my spider mites if I had spider mites. And you know, if you had aphids outside, you know, things would take care of that. But if they didn't, you could use the 2.5 water and the 11.5 water, and which I did to make sure I didn't have any bug rot, to make sure I didn't have any mold issues, to make sure I didn't have any issues along those lines. So the 2.5 hypochlorous acid it's a powerful sterilizer, so you can use it for cleaning your tents. It kills mites, aphids, fungus, gnats, and mold, and it gives you a 99.9% germination rate. The 4.5, 5.5, and 6.0, they're all good for watering your plant with. They're also good for making your compost tea. So instead of you doing the kale mixture that I did with kale and beauty water, because I didn't have any compost, you can use your compost and add the beauty water to it to be able to uptake the nutrients better. Or you can actually add an alkaline water to it, like a 9 or 8.5 or 9, whatever you need, to be able to make sure that when you're adding it, you're not changing the pH of the soil that you're adding it to. And then the 11.5 sodium hydroxide emulsifies your oils, kills your fungus, and it gives you a faster germination rate. I tried all 3 for germinating. I haven't had an issue germinating my seeds. And I found 11.5 cuts the time down to 1 to 2 days. So it actually makes it a lot better and a lot quicker. So it's cuts down on time. So if you want to know more about the waters, our great friend Roger Gadet, he does an absolutely amazing presentation on Wednesdays, and he explains the different properties of the water, the different levels of the water. Growing marijuana is just one step with the machine, and it can just do so much more for you and for the environment as well. And being Earth Day is a great day to talk about the environment. So, and then on Tuesdays, we have Sabina G, who does her Tuesday tips, and it's people telling their stories on how the water has changed their lives and how it's affected them. And for anybody who knows me, you know what it's done just by looking at me, and it's night and day. So get back in touch with the person who invited you for the passwords to the meetings, and start enjoying true health and start using no chemicals, and enjoying and getting more for your money.
Wow, Kelly, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll open up the floor if anybody's got any questions. We've got about 8 minutes left. So does anybody have any questions for Kelly? Probably covered it all.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
So I don't grow weed, but I grow other kinds of plants.
Yep.
And I'm growing chives and parsley from seed, and I've used 11.5.
Yep.
And I put a plastic cover on top.
Yep.
And it stinks. Well, that's with the paper. I put the seeds in the paper.
Okay.
Spray with 11.5. Put the plastic cover on top, and it really smells. It smells old, like it smells.
I don't cover it in plastic. I just leave it. I put it on a plate, and I put a paper towel, and I put my seeds, and I put another paper towel over it. Some people put it in a plastic bag and they'll tape it to their window so that way you get the heat from the sun. Other people will just leave it under the light so they get heat from that. I don't put them in a plastic bag. I just leave them on a plate, and I put them under a light, and I make sure that they stay wet. And I've never had a smell. I've done apples, I've done lemons, I've germinated lots of seeds.
Okay, my thought was just that the water would evaporate less.
It does evaporate less, but just keep an eye on it and just add the water to it. It's not, if it's stinking, it could be molding, it could be, a number of things that's happening. So you want to make sure that you're, if you're having that issue, just leave it open to the air and just keep an eye on the water and make sure they stay moist.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
To everyone. Quick question. You mentioned germinating with 2.5 and germinating with 11.5.
Yes.
And you said you had better success with 11.5. Is that?
I have never had an issue germinating my seeds. So people say, from where I got this information, people say that the 2.5 germinates at a 99.9% rate. I've germinated at 99.9%, almost 100% rate with using either beauty water, 2.5 or 11.5. But I found that the 11.5 got me my seeds quicker. So 1 to 2 days instead of 5 to 10 days. And I'm already planting.
And you're planting at what root length?
2 to 3 millimeter, like not very long.
Not very long, just as long as they get out.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
No problem. And again, we'll probably do another one in 2 weeks to do the demonstration that I did to actually show you my plants and show you the steps and walk you through exactly what I did for my plants. That way, if you missed that one, you can certainly join in 2 weeks and we'll do the other one again.
Now, is this a good time to start the seeds?
I've started mine already.
I've started
Oh.
mine already.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And when do you expect to take them outside?
Well, I have a greenhouse, so I can take them out, but we got snow this week, right? So I just didn't, I was worried because they're so low to the ground and the bottom of my greenhouse isn't sealed because I need the air to flow through. So I didn't want the cold days to affect that. So that's why I haven't put them outside yet, but I was going to last week. So I'm glad I waited.
And you'll keep them in the greenhouse all summer long?
Yep. That way I can control the water.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Since
Thank you.
I've got the 2 greenhouses, my plants will go in the one and then my garden will go in the other one, which will be it'll be great this year.
Nice. Thank you.
It's a lot taller, so I won't have to pull my plants down. They can grow free.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else?
So yeah, a question. So do you get into the work of processing as well, or do you just use the flour?
What do you mean by processing? Like cooking with it and oils and stuff?
Yeah. Do you make things with it?
Yes, I do. I bought a magic butter maker. It's a
I
magic.
have one too.
Yes, it's really simple. You throw your bud in the oven for like decarb it for, 30, 40 minutes. And then you throw it in your magic butter maker. You throw your butter or your oil in and your soy lecithin, and then you just push a button and walk away. And you come back and you just strain it and you're done, right? And then you can use the butters for, I make fudge, I've made gummies, like lots of different things. So
That's funny you say that, because I just got my machine and I'm gonna be trying it out. So
it works great. Did you get one with a recipe book?
yes, I did, and also my relative is a distributor of those. So but the question I was gonna ask was, do you do anything with solar?
I have solar that runs my fans in my greenhouse. So I have batteries out there because I needed a fan out there and I didn't want to use power.
Do you have a vendor, a wholesaler vendor you use that
No.
you would not on your solars?
No. We bought them all individually. We bought them from Canadian Tire as they went on sale for cheap. And we just picked up one every time we could afford one. And we've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 panels that are like 100 watt each. So if the time runs out and we're still asking questions, just log back in, okay? And we'll finish answering the questions.
Okay, we have a question from Gregory. If you don't mind, Gregory, you can start.
Yeah, my question was, you're growing those 3 plants. How much electrolysis cost did you figure that you used?
Not much at all, because they were all outdoor, right? Indoors, I used a little bit to spray down my tent, not a whole lot. And then because I was growing from seed, I wasn't growing from clones, so I didn't have to worry about any issues coming from somebody else's house. It was all here. So once I moved them outside, the butterflies and like all the bugs out there took care of everything for me. I didn't need to use a lot. We did have aphids, so I did spray the plants down, and I did do a treatment every couple of days. Maybe 1 bottle of enhancer if I was lucky, because you get like 5 gallons of the 11.5 and like 2.5 gallons of the 2.5. So it was more than enough, because you're not spraying a whole lot on your plants.
Yeah,
How long
thanks.
have you been doing this, Kelly?
Growing marijuana?
With the Kangen, yeah.
With the Kangen? 2
Yeah.
years I've grown it with Kangen. This is the first year that I actually decided I am doing an experiment, because my husband was big on using the chemicals and using the bloom and using this and using that. And I'm like, no, I don't want that, because I know you're flushing it out and doing the flush at the end to flush it out is great, but they're oil based and you're adding oils to something. So how do you know 100% that you're getting it all off your plants? You don't.
We've
Right?
got 15 seconds. So if it kicks off, you guys click
Just log
back
back in. Okay, so basically I've been doing it. Last year was the first year I did the experiment, and it was like phenomenal.
Well, thank you.